What's up guys, Chris from the Review Cave here, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about one of my favorite card game anime, Cardfight Vanguard. Now, one thing I do want to state is I will just be talking about the 2011 version of the anime, its very first season, which unfortunately is not available on its YouTube channel right here in the US, but you can watch it on other platforms like Amazon Prime and everything if you want to give it a shot for yourself. But I'm honestly trying to tell you guys why this anime is actually one of the best out there in terms of adapting a trading card game into an actual anime. I know Yu-Gi-Oh has been around for a long time and it has pretty much dominated in that regard, but Vanguard has a lot to offer that really Yu-Gi-Oh has not, or has at least tried but ended up just throwing it out the window for the majority of the time. And that's pretty much what I'm going to be going over within this video. I mean, I will obviously talk about the anime itself regarding its story and its characters, but I just want to keep in mind that I will end up doing some spoilers in this video to help illustrate my point of the actual show. I will do my best not to spoil too much, but in order to help illustrate my point, I will have to spoil a certain amounts of things considering the plot of the actual anime. So let's get started. So one of the many things that I believe makes Cardfight Vanguard one of the best trading card game anime out there is two core reasons from the very beginning of the show. For one, its very relatable protagonist, Aichi Sendo. Yes, if you can play spot the protagonist, he is the person with the blue hair. And the fact that while Vanguard is considered an insanely popular card game in the world of the anime, they managed to keep it all grounded in reality. They don't go too over the top with the fantastical or mystical elements or even sci-fi elements until like much later down the road within the anime's multiple seasons. What Vanguard does is it eases you into the actual story of the series, its lore, and also gives you a sense of how these characters interact with each other and how they grow as people without having them take part in multiple, oh, the world is in danger, I got to do the card game stuff in order to win. None of that. None of that really helps with the progression of the characters from the very start. I mean, I gave Yu-Gi-Oh a pass on this because one, they were establishing the overall goal of the story, which is like the Pharaoh and his memories and the mystery of the money of items, and they kind of were still kind of getting the rules of the actual card game together. Which, another segue I want to get into is the fact that while this series is grounded in reality, the game in the show and its cards are mirrored exactly from the physical card game. All the abilities and cards featured in the show are cards you can get in the actual card game, and the rules of the series stay true throughout the entirety of, well, the entirety of the anime. And whenever there's a new mechanic, it is introduced pretty much almost every season or two, and they have it integrated pretty well. One thing I do admire the show for doing is that at the start of every single one of its seasons, it comes up with a way to help reintroduce people to the rules of the game, as well as giving you an idea of what the new mechanics can in fact be. The first two episodes of the anime are focused around teaching the main protagonist the game, and with that I will get into the protagonist. Aichi Sendo is just a basic regular kid who is shy, introverted, has a tough time making friends in school, so honestly a lot of people that watch anime at this point. I'm kidding. But in all seriousness, one day he gets himself into a card shop, he learns how to play Vanguard, and he ends up trying to get better at it and ends up making a lot of friends. Now, Aichi is a pretty interesting character because, for one, he doesn't have protagonist syndrome, which is pretty much whenever a protagonist is introduced, more times out of any other person, they will most likely win the vast majority of their fights. But with Aichi, he loses a lot, which is believable because you don't expect someone who just learned a new game and its rules and some of the basics to automatically win every single game they're in and just be good at it. Throughout the show, Aichi actually grows as a player and as a person. We see him slowly but surely stick up for himself, get more confident, starts making friends and speaking his mind. That's something that is very relatable because there are a lot of people in real life that have problems and troubles when it comes to making new friends or speaking their mind. So having a protagonist like Aichi really does help people relate to him and, in a sense, help give them the courage to actually stand up for themselves or even, you know, get out there and try and make more friends. Especially since this anime is based off a card game, he makes friends through the card game, which in real life, people can in fact make new friends based on their hobbies, which is really good advice. Now, the one thing is that as we see Aichi grow throughout this series, the one thing is that, while I did say the series is grounded in reality, because despite, you know, there being like, you know, holographic cards and stuff like that, and fantastical elements later on, the characters do stuff stuff that you would expect from a normal person. You go to card shops, you open up booster packs, you fix up your decks, you ask your friends for help, you fix it around a specific strategy or having a backup strategy and stuff like that. You see this stuff very early on, and throughout the series, it's constantly told to the protagonist to constantly look over his strategies and improve over time. Hell, they even have the characters go to different card shops so they can find other people to play against or just to see how those shops are, which in reality, people do in fact do. They even have the characters form a team so that they can enter the regional championships and then into the national championships. And honestly, the main story of the series from the first half is pretty much just a slice of life card game anime. They learn how to play the card game, they have a couple of matches, they enter tournaments, they form a team, they go to regionals, then nationals, and then after that, we have the actual more serious version of the plot later down the line. Before I get into talking about that, I just want to talk about the rival character of the series, Toshiki Kai. Now, I'll be honest, I'm just going to say this right here and right now. If you're a fan of Seto Kaiba from the Yu-Gi-Oh franchise, you will love Toshiki Kai. This guy is more of a mysterious and stoic badass character who is very obsessed with the card game, and we're never really given a reason for why he likes the card game or why he is so obsessed with trying to be the best and get through nationals. We find this out later down the road with his history with the actual antagonist of the later half of the season, but for now he's more of a mysterious character, and every time he plays a card, specifically his ace monsters, it is just epic. Not to mention he is the #1 flexer in this anime. Every single flex moment in the series, well, like 80-90% of the time, it goes to Kai. Whenever he feels he's about to win, he declares final turn, even if his hand is empty, and he always wins. Quick note, final turn is a phrase used in the game and in the anime where if you're about to win that specific turn, it just means I'm gonna win this turn, just so I can clear any confusion. And the thing that I like about Kai is that he is actually the first person that Aichi fights, and he's the person that actually got Aichi into Vanguard. Now, Aichi was a victim of bullying when he was a kid, and even a bit right now, but it gets better. When he runs into a young Kai, he gives him his first card and basically says, okay, look, I know things are hard, but sometimes whenever you feel down, imagine yourself as the unit here on this card so you can be brave and strong just like him, which is kind of nice advice to give to a kid who's going through a rough time, because a lot of kids do this kind of thing when it comes to going through a rough time in their lives. A lot of kids do this with superheroes in a sense, for like escapism and stuff like that. So from that point on, Aichi basically takes the card and he plans to actually learn how to play the game. He makes his own deck, and in the first episode he runs into Kai and Kai teaches him the game, which I really do like. And throughout the entirety of the series, Aichi's goal is to get better at the card game so that he can beat Kai in a real card fight. Now obviously for the tutorial fight, Aichi manages to win, but it's pretty much implied that Kai just went easy on him since he was a new player, and because he didn't feel quite right having to essentially take the card that he gave him in the first place. The best thing about Kai is that he is honestly someone you never really know his inner thoughts for the vast majority of the series. You just think that he's someone who doesn't really care about others and just wants to fight and make it straight to the top, which is always enjoyable to see, because out of all the characters in the show, Kai is pretty much one of the less realistic characters, but that's kind of what gives you the draw. I mean, when you see Seto Kaiba, you don't see, oh, he's just a rich boy who likes playing card games. You just see the epic billionaire playboy who wants to decimate the main character in a card game because he basically wants to be the best, and he spends no expense in doing so. Kai doesn't have that kind of motivation. In fact, his actual motivation for trying to get stronger in the series and play in a lot more serious fights is revealed later down the road, and it's honestly a pretty nice backstory. Now, one thing I do want to get into is the actual plot of the second half of the series. It surrounds this powerful ability called Psyqualia. Psyqualium in Vanguard is pretty much heart of the cards magic, pretty much, except instead of drawing the right card at the right moment, you pretty much know exactly what you're going to do in order to win, or you know how the match is going to end. How it's described by the characters, the cards are speaking to them, basically telling them what to do in order to win and giving them a real image of the win, their actual winning image. They're able to see their image of victory and they follow what they can do to make it to that point, which in turn you could assume that that is a bad, but the way Vanguard goes about it, it doesn't make it too over the top of an ability, and they don't even make it so that the ability is something that can be won all the time. Built up to be a very powerful ability that basically guarantees you a win, but there are moments in the show with one of the main characters that in fact shows that you can rely on that power to win. One of these examples is Kai, who ends up fighting a character who develops Psyqualia, which is the main protagonist, and if things went the way it should have and the match ended with an undecided, Kai would have definitely taken down the protagonist. And the thing that I like in this later half of the arc is when Aichi starts developing his Psyqualia. He doesn't really know what it is, he just starts to believe that he is getting better at the card game, that he's getting stronger, but in reality it was just the Psyqualia telling him what to do. He wasn't thinking things through himself, he wasn't building the deck the way he was truly wanting, he was just listening to what the cards told him. But Aichi thought that that was him getting stronger, and when Kai realized this, he left their team thinking that without him on the team, Aichi would just stop obsessing over it, but it just made it worse until Aichi went full on evil. This is when he actually comes in contact with the main antagonist of the series, Ren Suzuka Mori, who is the champion of the Japanese nationals. His team won the previous championships, and one quick thing to note is that Ren actually has Psyqualia, and he's had it for a lot longer than Aichi, and he has a connection to Kai. There is nothing else I will spoil, you will just have to watch the actual anime to find out. So Ren convinces Aichi to fully embrace the power of Psyqualia, even to the point of abandoning the deck that he's made through his whole life in exchange for a somewhat stronger deck that is pretty much exactly identical to Ren's own deck, which is the Shadow Paladin. Now, one thing I do want to note is that in a lot of anime, you have main protagonists and their villains have this sort of thing where we're not so different, you and I. You know, the usual kind of trope or cliche in these shows, but between Aichi and Ren, it's pretty much true. Not just in terms of them gaining their abilities, but also it's reflected in their decks. Aichi uses Royal Paladins and Ren uses Shadow Paladins. It's also reflected in their main units or favorite units, their avatars, Blaster Blade and Blaster Dark, which furthers the two sides of the same coin type of deal, because Aichi ends up fully embracing the power of Psyqualia, allowing it to corrupt him, and he ends up pretty much ending up exactly like Ren. This was made very apparent right before Kai left the team on their second time around in the regional championships in the final match when he was fighting against this guy Kyo. Aichi basically declares, he pulls out a card out of his deck before the match starts and says, I will win with this one card. This is the card I will beat you with. And throughout the match, he basically looks super sinister or just plain creepy. Now, Aichi can pretty much be used as a way to look like a very antagonistic force, but the way Aichi's letting the Psyqualia take control of him, it's not just scary, it's also a little creepy, which I really do enjoy. I'm probably reading too much into this, but I think it's also kind of going into the fact that there are some people in card games that are just plain toxic and will just use their toxicity as an excuse that they're getting better, and that gives them the right to treat people bad. But that aside, it does kind of mirror what the whole being corrupted by the Psyqualia thing could also be reflected on, because Aichi does in fact act a lot meaner and more aggressive towards his friends, teammates, and even his own sister. You know what I mean, like not physical violence, but he just doesn't treat them with the respect that he's usually treated them or with the trust that he usually has given them over the course of the series. And this actually hurts you a lot more because throughout the whole 65 episode run all the way up to this latter half in the season when Aichi, gets corrupted, you get to know his character. You know how kind he is, how he's treated his friends, his teammates, everyone in his life, how they treated him. And when you see him go through this little downward spiral, you actually feel sorry for them and you actually really hope for Aichi to get better. And Kai is pretty much the character that manages to bring him back, which is a nice way of doing this because Kai is the one that got him into Vanguard and was also inadvertently responsible for getting him obsessed with the power of Psyqualia, and it's very much his responsibility to help free Aichi and help him realize the mistake he's making by relying on that ability way too much. Now, another quick thing that I kind of glossed over was the whole two sides of the same coin, or we're not so different, between Aichi and Ren. Ren had a similar beginning to Aichi. Instead of, him being bullied a lot and him discovering Vanguard, Ren always loved Vanguard. He wanted to make a team to go to nationals, to win nationals. He already had a member of his team, Tetsu, with him, who was pretty much his best friend. Then when Kai transferred to his school, he found out that he played Vanguard and he was pretty good at it. He convinced Kai to join their team, and they ended up training and getting better themselves. But Ren ended up starting to realize that he was pretty much the weak link of their team. Tetsu started getting better better, but Kai was the best player on their team, and Ren couldn't even win once against. This pretty much gave him a bit of an inferiority complex because, from what we can tell, the only real joy he's had in life was playing Vanguard. The only way for him to have fun was playing Vanguard, and since he couldn't win against his best friend, who was in fact the best player he's ever seen, he thinks that he'll drag them down, and he wants to get better, which is when he awakens Psyqualia. Now, when Ren activates it, he had an inferiority complex, which does in fact boost the whole corruption of Psyqualia and using it for a more over-the-top way, which honestly Kai ends up seeing as something bad, trying to convince Ren to stop using Psyqualia, but in the end, Kai realizes that he has to leave the team, get stronger on his own, and then come back to save Ren from it, which is the whole origin of why Kai is so obsessed with getting stronger and winning all these matches, because he wants to one day go and help Ren the way he just helped Aichi. So yeah, the protagonist and the antagonist of the first season pretty much had similar beginnings when it comes to Vanguard, and the second they awakened their powers, it started to slowly corrupt them due to their views of getting stronger and not having any idea how to truly keep themselves under control. Combine that with a similar reason for why they wanted to get stronger, and you kind of have the whole "you and I are not so different" trope done pretty damn well. I know I stated that Vanguard was placed firmly in reality, and it really is, and even when you have this whole Psyqualia thing, it's not really something that other people really get or other people really know about. Only like Aichi and Kai know about it, as well as Ren and like the base members of Team Asteroid. From the show, the only people who have had Psyqualia were just Ren and Aichi. That is it, which honestly helps set up for the final climactic battle of the season, which is honestly pretty cool. Now, I know I feel like I rambled on a little bit, but overall, Cardfight Vanguard is a really good anime for you to watch, and since it's so grounded in reality, you'll get more attached to the characters, you'll see them grow and develop bit by bit, and you'll get the feeling that you're improving along with them. The series will teach you how to play the basics of the card game, as well as giving you some really nice characters to play with, and how the game can in fact work in real life. Now again, this series came out back in 2011, and the game has changed a bit since then. I mean, the anime and the game itself have had like a bit of a reboot, which the basics of the game are still exactly the same, but specific cards and abilities have been changed, and I will probably cover the anime reboot at some point. I haven't decided yet. If this video does well, I'll probably just do one video per season. But yeah, Vanguard has a really great and relatable protagonist who has a pretty good character arc through the first season, a great rival who is epic in every way, a very good antagonist who takes the whole trope of "you and I are one and the same," or you know, the whole "you and I aren't so different" trope, and does it pretty well. There's also the fact that the slice of life elements in the show do help with its pacing and character progression, and the fact that the show manages to do things that give you the idea of what actual people that would play a card game would do really does speak to the viewer, because it eases you into the whole mystical elements later on, since it's based off in reality. But what did you guys think? This a nice video? Did I convince you to give the Vanguard anime a try? Let me know in the comments down below. I might end up covering the next few seasons like I just said, but it all depends on how this video ends up doing. And while the first season was good, it actually improves in both its animation and its storytelling with each season, which is something I really want to talk about later. But yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If there's anything in particular you want me to talk about, whether it's anime, manga, TVs, movies, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at the official review cave for updates on future videos. And thanks again to Cor for editing this video. I really do appreciate it, man. Go give him a subscribe if you haven't already. He has a YouTube channel called Cor, and you can follow him at Cor Reviews on Twitter also. I'll leave those in the link down below. And yeah, hope you guys have an awesome day.